Hello, Explorer. Welcome along to another episode of the greatest podcast in the history of the universe. We are searching through the solar system to sort out your questions. My name's Dan, and this is a brand new science quest. And it's a special question episode. If you ever have anything you want sorted, anything sciencey at all, make sure you leave it as a voice note for me on the free Fun Kids app. You can do that at funkidslive.com too. I will do all of the digging and I will figure out what's actually happening, what's fact, what's fiction, what's fake, what's false, what's the truth, what's actually happening with science. Make sure you send it as a voice note to me. Free Fun Kids app, funkidslive.com. Click on my page, it will come through really quickly. First one this week from Robin.
If two people are the same height, one is fat and the other is thin, are their skeletons the same size?
Well, Robin, humans don't have the same size skeleton. Not everyone. They vary wildly in shape and size and density and proportions. Every human starts with a basic set of 206 bones. That's kind of the plan. You've got, your femur, your tibia, your fibia, your clavicle, all sorts of them. But a lot makes one person's skeleton grow into another. Your bones will be different depending on how tall you are. And how tall you are is normally decided by your DNA, right? That's the information that's passed down in your genes in every single cell. It's got like a little biography of kind of what you're meant to be, what you're meant to look like, how tall, how short, how big, how wide. It's all in that DNA. Now, that's not strictly the exact truth, because a lot of other things on the outside of your body can change things as well. But in your genes, you've got a lot of info about who you are, and how tall you are tends to be in that. And that's passed down from your parents and great-grandparents and grandparents and all of those. If you're taller, you'll have longer, probably bigger bones. Whether you're a boy or a girl as well, male skeletons tend to be larger with broader shoulders. Also, how old you are, because bones get shorter and lighter as you get older. So, no, Robin, humans do not have the same size skeleton. They are all different, and there's a lot that they can make them change. Here's another one. This is a message sent to me by Alda, who wants to know, how do people stay safe in rockets? Well, there are a lot of things that can make rockets extremely dangerous. So it's with very precise engineering that they're able to reach space in one piece. I mean, SpaceX, Elon Musk's space company, they've done so many test launches for one of them, spending a lot of money, using a lot of parts, and they've sent those into space near enough without any humans being in it. So it's like incredibly precise. They use a lot of fuel. Most of the time, about 90% of a rocket's mass and the stuff that makes it is fuel, the stuff that's needed to get up there. Fuel is very flammable, so any mistake could make it go up in flames. Also, a rocket needs to be strong and light. It's bumped through the atmosphere, but it needs to stay in the air, so it needs to be durable, but also very, very light. They're normally made of like aerospace-grade titanium, maybe even aluminium. Now, there's a lot of forces that are moving the rocket in different ways as well. Gravity, there's thrust, there's drag, there's lift. Everything needs to be strong to stay together. And rockets are safe because experts take years calculating very precisely what they're made of to give astronauts enough space to move. It needs to be light enough to get into the air and strong enough to stand up to all those forces. And all of those mixed together with a lot of testing means that people stay safe in rockets. Alda, thank you very much for your question. Here's another one. This is Ashlyn, who wants to know, how does soap get germs off your hands? It's all to do with the molecules that make up soap, the tiny little things that it actually is. In like a little bit of soap, in each little bit, there is a head and a tail in each of the molecule. The head is hydrophilic. That means it loves water. The tail is hydrophobic, which means it hates water. And those two opposite ideas are very, very important. So what happens when you wash your hands with soap? The tail, that hates water. It gets to work, but it loves all the fats and bacteria. So it kind of breaks that up, it sticks to all of the dirt, and it locks into it. That's the tail, the hydrophobic end. The head, that's hydrophilic, that loves the water. So when you rinse it, it leaps out, it grabs on, it wants to hold on to all these water droplets. It does that, but remember the back end of it is loving the dirt, so it grabs onto that and that drags it and rinses you and sweeps all the grime away. So that's what's happening, Ashlyn. It's a very delicate balance between two ends of the soapy molecules, the bit that hates water, the bit that loves water, and how they work together to latch onto grime and to also latch onto the water and make sure it rinses away. Thank you so much for your question. Here's another one from Gemma that's on a similar theme. How does your body fight viruses? It does it in a few ways. One is with special white blood cells. They're called T cells, and they act almost like police cars for your body. They're constantly scanning to make sure the other cells you have are what they should be. They're not invaders. They're not like sneaky spies with a mask and a cape on, perhaps. And if they spot a virus, these T cells, they get to work by breaking it apart using enzymes to kill it off. But they need to be ready to know what might be coming. Okay, they have to have the training to fight whatever the invader might be. And that's where vaccines come in. If there's a new virus going around that your body might not know, you get a tiny amount of the new disease, or maybe something similar, that's put into your body. So your white blood cells, they become aware of what the new virus is, so they can kind of get ready. They can have the fighters ready to go with the right proteins and the right enzymes in there, should the actual real thing want to come in, take over and infect you. So that's why vaccines are really important, and that's how your body fights viruses. Gemma, thank you very much for your question. Shall we get on another voice note then? I think so. This is from Blake.
Hello, my name is Blake and I'm 8 years old from New Zealand, and my question is, how do they know what's inside an atom even though you can't see one?
Well, Blake, we know what's inside an atom because experts have spent a lot of work trying to figure it out. They've used high-speed particles that bounce off the atom to see what's inside, a little bit like a torch, but the problem is atoms are much smaller than waves of light. We can't see them like you can through a standard microscope, but some experiments have really helped us out. So there was a man called J.J. Thomson. He experimented with something called a cathode ray tube. It was a glass tube without any air in it, a complete vacuum, but it had an electric current inside it. And he sent this current round and round and round, and he spotted that the beam of electricity bent towards some parts of the tube and away from the others. He realised that some of the atoms had electrons in them, which is something that it's a subatomic particle that makes up all the atoms that we have. So that was really important. That happened in 1897. And then another smart scientist, Ernest Rutherford, decided that, well, in the very middle of these atoms, there is a nucleus. It's dense. There's a lot of stuff in a very small amount of space. That was in 1911. And then it went on from there. Over time, we discovered protons and neutrons, more subatomic particles that make up an atom, and electron clouds as well. And over time, experts discovered that you could split the atom. Albert Einstein kind of figured this out with E equals mc squared that you might have heard of. Now, in its basic equation, that means E, energy, equals mass for m, c stands for the speed of light, squared. So energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light. Now, there's a lot going on there. Basically, it means that energy and mass have a relationship, and the energy inside a bit of mass is a huge number, the square of the speed of light. So the value of the speed of light times itself, that's how much energy is in mass. It basically just means there's so much going on in a very tiny amount of space. I understand that's really complicated. So Albert Einstein had come up with this idea, and then more experts discovered that if you bombard atoms with subatomic particles, neutrons, it disrupts the atom and it splits it open. And when you split open an atom, you've got all that energy we just discussed, and it breaks free. It has to just like blast loose. So it's amazing. In these tiny little things, the building block of everything that we know has so much energy inside, Blake. That's how we know what's inside an atom. Thank you very much for your question. If you ever have a question that you want answered, make sure you send it over to me as a voice note on the free Fun Kids app, and at funkidslive.com too. I will do all the digging and we will sort out your answer. Right, we've learnt a bit about the body, actually. What with soap and with T cells, we can do more now and chat to an expert of what's going on inside you. Here's Professor Hallux.
Hallux's Hearing Help Desk. Aha! I've got a call. Hallux's Hearing Help Desk.
Hi, Professor Hallux. What exactly is earwax and what does it do?
Great question. Earwax might look yucky, but it's brilliantly helpful stuff. It's made in your outer ear canal, and the fancy name for this waxy stuff is cerumen. So why do we need it? Well, earwax has several important jobs. First, it protects and cleans the skin of the ear canal so you don't get dry or itchy ears. Second, it helps to fight off germs and keeps the skin inside the ear healthy. Finally, it acts as a shield to protect your ear from things like dust, dirt, and even bugs. Yes, bugs. How does it do this? Well, the earwax is sticky and traps these things so they do not reach the eardrum. So remember, never to put things inside your ears to get rid of wax, because the wax is doing an important job and you could hurt yourself. Although if you're having trouble hearing, it's possible you have too much wax. But that's something you should ask your doctor. I said that's something to ask your doctor about. Hee Hallux's Hearing Help Desk, with support from Phonak. Find out more at funkidslive.com/Hallux.
That is it for this week's Science Quest. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a question, make sure you send it over to me through Fun Kids app. You can do that at funkidslive.com too. Fun Kids, we are a children's radio station from the UK. Listen all over the country on our app, on the website, or wake up your smart speaker and ask it to play Fun Kids.